people joining late.
Yay.
Check me, Janine, but I think we do have quorum.
Yeah, we do have quorum. You want to get started?
Let's. Here we go with the preamble. Hello, everybody. Hi. My name's Carrie Keenan. Jessica Chait and I are co-chairs of this committee, Chelsea Land Use, which usually meets monthly. This is our November meeting. Jessica will be joining late tonight by phone. So please be kind. And Jessie also is away tonight. So Janine is joining from Jessie's office. As per the city's order, the mayor's order, we have been meeting remotely. This meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on YouTube. It will be accessible at a later date and forever. The agenda for tonight is public and can be viewed on the Community Board 4 website. We encourage you to sign up for e-blasts to get the agenda. If this is your first time at a Community Board 4 meeting, there are 3 things to know about the process. First, after each presentation, the committee will ask questions to the presenter. Then members of the public or attendees can ask questions or make a comment. And subsequently, the discussion goes back to the committee. On some agenda items, the committee members may next vote to make a recommendation, which usually results in a letter for the full board to vote on. If you'd like to comment or ask a question after a presentation and after the committee has spoken, you must press the raised hand button on your screen, usually on the bottom right. And if you're calling in, use *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If anyone has any questions regarding what I just shared, please raise your hand now. Seeing none, I'd like the committee to take a moment to quickly introduce themselves. Pamela, can you start?
Sure. I'm Pamela Wolf. I'm a member of this committee, a public member of CB4 for the last, I think, 12 years. And I live on 21st Street in Chelsea.
Thanks, Pamela. Bert?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bert Lazarin from, been on the community board for a while. I love being on the Chelsea Land Use Committee. And I live in Chelsea, 24th Street and 10th Avenue.
Thanks, Bert. Betty?
Hi, good evening. I'm a member of the Chelsea Land Use Committee. I live on 28th Street in Penn South.
Mrinal?
Hello, everyone. I'm Mrinal Vikram, Chelsea resident and member of Community Board 4 for the past year and a half. I'm also on the WPE committee.
David?
I'm Dave Holoka. I live on 19th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue.
Thanks, David. Marty?
Hi, folks. I'm Marty DeCat. I've been on the community board for a while. I live in Penn South.
Thanks, Marty. Kit?
Evening, everybody. Kit Tollerson. I live on 22nd Street. I'm a member of Manhattan Community Board 4, and in addition to Chelsea Land Use, I'm also on the ACES committee.
Thanks, Hector.
Evening, everybody. I'm a member of Community Board 4 and also Health and Human Services. Been on the board for about almost 4 years now. A lot of fun. Thanks.
Thanks, Hector. Tina?
Tina DeVlish Antonio. I live on West 26 between 6th and 7th, and I've been on the board a wonderful 8 years or so.
Thanks, Tina. Viren?
Hi, I'm Viren Ramlet. I'm with CLU for the last 2 years now, I guess. Live in Chelsea.
Thanks, Viren. Mike?
Hi, I live in Chelsea at 10th Avenue. I've been on the board for about 10 years now.
Thanks, Mike. Lowell?
I live at 23rd and 11th. I've been on the board for 8 years, including serving as chair of the board for 2019 and 2020.
Thanks, Lowell. Brad?
Good evening, Brad Pasquarello. I live in Chelsea. I'm also on the Waterfront Parks and Environmental Committee, and I think it's over 10 years. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brad. So for anyone who missed the initial announcement that Jessica is going to be delayed and will join by phone when she can. And Jesse is also out tonight, but we're joined by Janine. So with that, let's get to our agenda. We have
but
two.
that we're joined by Janine. We're joined by Janine.
I said, and we're joined by Janine.
Oh,
Did
I heard
say
it
but?
wrong. I'm sorry.
Sorry. And we are blessed to be joined by Janine. Okay, so we have two items on the agenda tonight, and then a number of announcements and updates, some of which will facilitate some discussion for sure. So it could be a busy night. The first agenda item is 260 11th Avenue, an application for a zoning text amendment to facilitate an enlargement of the Otis Elevator Building located at 260 11th Avenue, compliant with existing approvals by LPC. And to clarify that the increase in the permitted floor area ratio available under that section may be applied to an enlarged zoning lot. So the specific text amendments are amend the height and setback regulations of the Special West Chelsea District to allow the LPC approved enlargement of the Otis Elevator Building, and amend the zoning text that was adopted in 2009 to ensure that it will continue to apply to the enlarged zoning lot. These changes are limited to this site only. The impact of this text amendment, though not the text amendment explicitly, has already been approved by this committee in January 2019, and that letter is in the Dropbox. Hopefully everybody got a chance to see it. Jessica and I met with the applicants on November 7th. Jean Travers is the attorney, and I'll turn it over to Jean for a short and sweet version because it can be complicated, outlining a basic description of the approved project and then a description of the text amendment and why it's needed now. Jean, over to you.
Thank you very much for that intro, Carrie. Very nice to meet all of you. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen. Over here. Okay, you should all see my full screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just this. Okay. So good evening once again. I'm Gene Travers. I'm a land use attorney with Kramer, Levin, Neftalis, and Frankel. I'm joined tonight by Alan Reagan of Vornado Realty Trust on behalf of the applicant. This is the return of the Otis Elevator Building project at 260 11th Avenue. I'm going to start by giving some history and background because I know not everyone was on the committee the last time that this project was presented. I think that's going to help set some context for the requested zoning amendments, which, as you'll see, are fairly technical in nature. So just a little bit of history. The Special West Chelsea District was adopted on June 23rd, 2005, followed a few years later by the West Chelsea Historic District. This project area is within both the Special District and the Historic District. In 2009, a prior owner of the site secured a zoning amendment to address a split lot condition that was created by the adoption of the Special District. And we're going to discuss that split lot condition and this zoning amendment in a moment. But for now, you should be aware that CB4 approved that amendment, and that amendment applied to this development site only. In 2015, the applicant entered into its ground lease for the site. In 2019, the applicant obtained a certificate of appropriateness from the Landmarks Preservation Commission for the current design. And that application, as Carrie mentioned, was also approved by CB4 in January of 2019. And the applicant filed a draft of its land use application with city planning in December of 2020. That is the application that is before you this evening. Since that filing was made, the New York City Human Resources Administration, which leases the space in the Otis building, unexpectedly renewed its lease. That caused a little bit of a delay in our processing and thinking about this application, but we are still pursuing it. Where we are now, first and foremost, there have been no changes to the design that was previously approved by CB4 and LPC. The slides of the proposed project that you see this evening are identical to the ones that were presented to the community board in 2019. What we are seeking are technical adjustments to the zoning resolution necessary to actually construct that previously approved design. Specifically, we're looking to amend the height and setback regulations of the special district to allow the LPC approved enlargement of the Otis building. We're also looking to amend that 2009 zoning text that was adopted specifically for the site to ensure that it'll continue to apply to the development site zoning lot once it's enlarged. Similar to that 2009 zoning amendment, these changes are going to be limited to this development site only. Just to orient ourselves, we are across 11th Avenue from the Star Lehigh building in between West 27th and West 26th Streets. The project area consists of 3 separate tax lots. Tax lot 1 is occupied by the Otis building. As you can see, its footprint right here. And then it also has this vacant surface parking lot area fronting on West 27th Street. Lot 6 is improved with a mid-rise commercial building, and lot 10 is improved with a 1-story commercial building. These are some existing condition photographs. You have the Otis building in the foreground and the mid-rise commercial building next door. You can't really make out the 1-story building on lot 10, but it's there. This is the vacant parking area located behind the Otis building on 27th Street. And depending on whether or not you were on the committee in 2019, this is either going to be a refresh or an introduction, but the project is going to involve the restoration of the Otis building, the restoration of that mid-rise commercial building on 26th Street, and the erection of a new structure on that vacant parking lot area on 27th Street. And these, the 2 restored buildings and the new structure are going to be interconnected. They're going to operate as a single building under a single certificate of occupancy. This is another rendering on 27th Street showing you that new structure behind the Otis elevator building. And this is a rendering on 26th Street. You could see the restored Otis building, the restored mid-rise commercial building. You can see the new structure being constructed up and over as an enlargement of the Otis building. And this is that 1-story commercial building located on lot 10. This massing perhaps gives a clearer picture of what's actually happening. Again, the new construction, you have it going up and over as an enlargement of the Otis building. And again, this design is unchanged. We're not seeking any modifications. We are seeking adjustments to the zoning resolution to allow this particular design to be constructed. And it's actually this setback enlargement portion that's really driving the need for the first of our requested amendments. The current regulations of the special district mandate a uniform street wall up to a height of 125 feet. The current height of the Otis building is only 111 feet. That means that an as-of-right enlargement would need to be located at the street line and reach a height of 125 feet before a setback could be incorporated. As this diagram illustrates, that enlargement would significantly impair this historic building and its cornice line, and probably never be approved by LPC. And that's exactly why they did approve this minimally visible setback enlargement. The text amendment would make the minimum base height equal to the height of the existing building, such that as soon as you got to the roof level, you can set back and construct this particular enlargement on an as-of-right basis. And again, this change is limited to this development site only. I have copied, for anyone who hasn't a chance to look at the approval letter that CB4 issued to LPC back in 2019, an excerpt here. The enlargement was discussed at that time. It says, just read the proposed setback sensitive preservation of the cornice's dramatically terminating impact easily justifies an exception in this case. The proposed zoning text amendment will require public review at a later date, and that later date is this evening. The second amendment involves a technical update to the existing floor area provision that was adopted in 2009 specifically for this site. As a background, within 100 feet of 11th Avenue, the site is zoned C63 within sub-area C of the special district. Beyond 100 feet, it's zoned M15 and not within any particular sub-area. The basic floor area ratio, or FAR, in these two districts is 5. And this split lot condition created an issue where you have an existing overbuilt building in the C63 district that is built greater than 5 FAR, as is the Otis building. It's built to about 6.33 FAR. And the other portion of the zoning lot is built less than 5 FAR because the amount of floor area allowed in the M15 portion is reduced by the amount of floor area above 5 FAR in the C63 portion. So the undeveloped M15 portion essentially absorbs that overbuilt floor area. And this situation would result in the development of a non-contextual building on the vacant portion of the development site. So the text amendment that was approved in 2009 was designed to correct this situation by allowing the FAR in the C63 portion to be increased to alleviate the overbuilt condition, provided that a payment is made to the Highline Improvement Fund. Now, as drafted, that 2009 amendment applied only to zoning lots existing prior to June 23rd, 2005, which again was the date of adoption of the special district. The amendment that we are requesting would simply remove that limitation to ensure that the provision would continue to apply even after the zoning lot is enlarged to include lot 10. So this is showing the zoning lot as exists today. This is showing the zoning lot as proposed, including lot 10, which is owned by the applicant, and the excess floor area from lot 10 would be used to support the design that was previously approved. Again, this change is going to apply only to this development site and not other sites in the district, because the development site is the only one that presents this split lot condition and has an existing building in the C63 district that is built greater than the base FAR of 5, but less than the maximum FAR of 7.5. I know that was a lot to take in, but I'm gonna pause there. We hope we can count on CB4's continued support of this project, and we would be very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you for, Jessica and I are new to this project, so we don't have a lot of history here. And the applicants were very patient answering a lot of questions that we had. So that said, I would like to turn it over to the committee for questions. Mike, I see your hand raised, but I was wondering if maybe we want to hear from Betty or Bert or both, who were involved in the original drafting of the letter for approval.
Well, I guess I could say, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. When I went back and I looked at the letter, saw my name at the bottom of the letter, as oh yeah, that's right. I don't remember too much discussion about the split lot condition when we were doing this in 2019. So I think I would appreciate if you reiterated what was on the screen with the purple and the pink here, and just if I guess it's Eugene could go over that just again. I would like to say that we were very happy that the enlargement over the Otis elevator building was set back, and that pleased us because it wouldn't detract from the historic nature of that building. So I think that the split lot condition is a little subtle or a little complicated. So if that could be reviewed again, would you do that?
I'd be happy to. So again, this split lot condition was created when the special district was first adopted back in 2005. In 2009, the former owner attempted to correct it, and they pretty much did correct it by getting that amendment adopted in 2009 to basically ensure that the undeveloped portion in the M15 district the development potential wasn't artificially reduced due to having to absorb the overbuilt condition in the C63 district. Since that time, as we've worked through this, we've identified a nuance in the text that we think our project could work as is. You could do it in 2 steps, cure the overbuilt and then enlarge the zoning lot. But since we're already essentially going through this process because we need to for the street wall text amendment, we figured why not remove any sense of ambiguity and just clean up the text to make it very clear that this split lot mechanism that was adopted in 2009 will continue to have its intended effect even after we enlarge the zoning lot to include lot 10. Because the existing text, as I noted here, it says it applies to zoning lots existing prior to June 23rd, 2005, which is the current zoning lot. Once we add lot 10, there's a question of whether or not this was a zoning lot existing as of June 23rd, 2005. And does that undermine the original intent of that 2009 amendment that created this mechanism to alleviate the overbuilt situation? So again, we could do it a different way, but since we're already in the process, we thought it'd be prudent to clean up the text. Again, that we're not doing so doesn't alter the design at all. It's still the exact same design. We're using the floor area from lot 10 to support that approved design, but we're taking advantage of the opportunity to make the language a little clearer.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Thank you.
Good. My pleasure.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, you just answered a couple of my questions. I'm just curious to know this excess FAR in the C63 split lot is now absorbed, you say, right? In the M15 lot, is that true?
Basically, so when you have a single zoning lot, the zoning regulations are applied on the zoning lot wide basis, and you've got to take into account the overbuild in the C63 district. It's not like this is a barrier between the two. The overbuilt floor area does spill over onto the M15 portion, and it acts as an artificial floor area cap and diminishes the amount that you would ordinarily develop on that site. If it's helpful to think of that way, with the floor area kind of spilling over to the M15 district.
Yeah, so it happens more or less automatically.
Correct.
Right. So there was never any separate, action that had to be taken. It just, once it was done, it was done.
Correct. It was just kind of an unintended quirk of the adoption of the special district. In this, city planning doesn't always go with a fine-tooth comb and make sure the boundaries all work and all the mechanics work out. They try to do a good job of that, but when you're doing an area-wide rezoning, sometimes you end up with unintended quirks like this one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Are there any other committee members who would like to ask any questions or have any comments? David? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Eugene, just to be clear, once lot 10 is added, what we're talking about will not add any allowed FAR, any additional allowed FAR to your total footprint, correct?
Yeah, the addition of lot 10 does not change the massing of the approved design at all.
Right. So within the overall border that includes lot 10, after this change, there will not be more FAR allowed than there would have prior, correct?
Correct. We're still operating under the existing zoning framework. Everything is as of right, except for this street wall modification.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Aaron?
Yeah, just to sort of follow up on David's question, what mechanism or what sort of language would you have in this amendment that would make sure that no additional FAR or floor area will be added in the future or transferred over to some other site? So if I can clarify my question, let's say you get this lot 10 added and there is an extra FAR that's sitting there. You promise us not to use it, but what tools do you have or what mechanism do you have to make sure that that's not going to change in the future? And potentially be transferred over to another site?
Sure. So there's two things that really lock us in here. First, there's the existing zoning regulations which govern how much floor area is generated on these lots and can be used. But most importantly, we are subject to LPC approval here. So any change that we would wish to make to this previously approved design, we would have to go back to LPC. They would have to approve it. It would come back before you. So that's really the mechanism that is guaranteeing that what we are showing you tonight is what we are going to build. And if we want to do something different, we would have to go back through another process. We would be appearing before you through the LPC track because we would need to amend the approved design.
Okay, yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. How about potential transfer of rights?
In terms of if we have any excess left on our development site, transferring it to another site?
Yes.
I don't know. I think we may have maxed out our development potential, but to the extent that we did have anything left over, everything here is within the historic district. So whatever would be built here, again, assuming Alan, jump in. I don't know if we have any floor area left, but if we did, whoever was purchasing it would have to come back before you too, through the LPC process. But I don't think we have any substantial amount of floor area left over.
Can you give us a number of what might be left over, if you don't mind?
We're not far enough along on construction drawings to quote a number. It would be a false assumption at this point, having gone through mechanical deductions and things like that.
But again, any transfer to any of these sites, this entire block and up and down the area is in the historic district. So any transfers, well, we can only transfer to any of the immediately adjoining sites. They might be overbuilt already. They are in the historic district, and that's kind of the mechanism that gives control as to what's happening on this block.
Okay, thank you so much. And my last question, is it going to be a merged zoning lot, single lot, or is it going to retain its separate zoning lot numbers?
You're saying the tax lot numbers?
No, these three tax lots that you're showing right now, would they remain individual lots, or are they being merged? Are you applying for merging of lots rather?
So I believe lots 1 and 6 will at some point be merged into a single tax lot because that's basically the development. Lot 10 will remain a single and independent tax lot.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bert?
Hi, one of my questions you already answered is what Viren was talking about, guarantees. But just in summary, what we have before us, changes in the zoning a little bit here, a little bit there, but the project itself has not changed from when it was approved by LPC and when it was approved by us. I wasn't on the committee in 19. I was chair of the board, so I wasn't allowed to be on any committees, but I do remember the project coming before the full board. And I remember the overhang and the development of the 27th Street lot. But none of that was approved is changing now. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
So it's the same physical project.
Correct. Everything that was previously shown and approved has been unchanged. It's the exact same project we're showing you tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bert. Marty?
Thank you. I'm glad you've got this slide up. Is that building the now theater space, and is it itself a historic building?
It is a historic building. It's not a theater. Yeah, lot 10. It's a historic building. It's a event space currently.
Any plans to change it?
No, it's under, I think, a 5 or 10 year lease with a tenant. And also, given the low scale nature of it, it'd be very difficult to put an addition or make modifications to it because everything would be visible from the street.
Yeah, what I was worried about is some destruction of that building and some development in it, but I'm glad to see that. If you, I need to hear that it's a protected building.
It is a protected building. It's within the landmarks. It's contributing to the landmark district.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm curious to know, how does the tax lot's going to change, right? And how does that happen?
This is pretty routine for a development site when it's you have two separate tax lots to merge them into a single tax lot. It's a very administrative process.
But you do that, yes?
The applicant does it.
Well, that's what I mean. You do it on their behalf, yeah.
Yeah, they file.
Yeah,
it
we'd have counsel do it. Yep.
Okay.
Lowell?
Yeah, this is not really on point with the zoning text amendment, but there is always a ton of traffic on 26th Street with trucks loading in and out. Can you just confirm that this isn't going to change that and make that situation any worse?
The current design has the loading docks on 27th Street.
Okay.
The car rental place that is on 26th Street as part of the development would go away.
Okay, I'm not saying it's your building on 26. I'm just saying as a block, it's always a mess.
Yeah, I'm just commenting on the part that my building and the truck rental place.
You're not going to make the situation any worse with this.
Right. Sounds like it might be making it better.
You guys know what it looks like. I mean.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Lowell. Also off point, any plans to plant any trees around your new development?
That's something we would consider.
As well as sustainability. Can you like share any ideas for sustainability and resiliency in your new building?
So it would be an all electric building. That's how it's currently designed to comply with the recent local law. Resiliency, there'd be flood mitigation. We've moved stuff out of the basement up to upper floors of the building so that it also have passive and active flood mitigation around at the retail street level.
Okay, back to the trees for a second. When you say consider, can you commit?
I don't know what's underneath the sidewalks because we haven't done any test pits or anything else. I would hate to say we'll do trees and then get there and there's city infrastructure that's in the way, having learned that from a separate project. But we are pro trees. If we can get them in, that is generally our preferred thing to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just checking my notes real quick. Okay, Brad?
But we could still do elevated tree pits.
Could you guys hear that? Elevated tree pits?
Yeah, planters.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd have to go through Public Design Commission and others because it would be on city sidewalk.
Okay, thanks. Janine, is there anyone from the community?
Oh, hold on. That doesn't
sorry, Brad.
sound like much of a commitment. You know?
Can you hear Brad?
We can. I don't think. Well,
I think we could have more than that in writing. That's just kind of a brush off. Yes.
I would suggest certainly putting that in the board's recommendation. I think Alan has indicated that they're open to it, but it's subject to a little bit of homework before he could formally commit to anything.
Is that good, Brad? Your hand's still up.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I love the project, so I don't want to be negative here. Please always help. Thank you.
We appreciate, you doing everything you can to green. Is there anyone from the community, Janine?
No, no one has their hand up. I see Pamela has her hand up though.
Oh, you do. Sorry, Pamela, your hand is blending into your bookshelf.
Oh,
Pamela.
sorry about that. I didn't know you could see me since I can't see you. As far as plantings along 11th Avenue and the crosstown streets, there's no subway there. So very likely there's plenty of room for trees and a commitment, some reference to your willingness to do that in writing would be very helpful for us, make us feel a lot better. In the meantime, if there are raised beds to be done, that will need to go before LPC. And it's a whole design thing. We've just been through this on 6th Avenue. So that's also something to be considered, but it is a little more complex. The building on 26th Street, Lot 10 is one that came before CB4 a few years back, and we did a lot of back and forth and had a lot to say about how that facade was treated.
Right.
Does everybody remember that?
Yes, there was signage issues
The end
too.
result of it, I think we all came away pretty happy with how it worked out. David probably remembers a lot about it more than I do. Anyway, I just said that to say thanks.
Bert?
Yeah, I just want to remind Pamela and the rest of the board. Pamela, you said there's no subway. There is a subway. The 11th Avenue.
Darn,
subway,
Bert.
the number 7 train goes all the way down to at least 26th Street, if not 25th Street.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. You see that?
The venting station is right south of us.
Empty lot between 26th and 25th Street. That's where the subway ended. That's where they used that lot to go into the subway, take the vehicles, whatever they needed to do the digging. That's the subway goes down that far. Now I don't know how deep it is.
Thank you for that education.
It may be very
Appreciate
deep.
it.
It may be very deep, but the subway goes there. That's why we're always talking about extending it a few more blocks and having a station at 23rd Street.
Thank you both. So it doesn't look like we have anybody else who wants to speak on this, and there's no members of the public who have raised their hands. Brad, are you raising your hand again?
Yes, quick question. As I mentioned before, Marty and I are on the Waterfront Parks Environmental. I just would like to briefly hear about the greenness of the building.
It's an all-electric building. We'll have studied the effects on redoing all of the double-hung windows in Chelsea, in the Otis Elevator Building and the John Williams Building on 26th Street, as well as what kind of coatings and insulated or IGUs we use for the storefront and the facade on the new build. Vornado as a company is generally committed to lead standards in all of our buildings. So as we get further through construction drawings, we're going to continue to study the impact and sustainability on the project.
So in our letter, should we put that in there, guys?
So Brad, you're breaking up, but I think you're asking if we can stipulate that in the letter. Also, just
Please.
To that point, in your original project description, you mentioned new and existing window openings throughout will receive aluminum windows to match original colors, which are to be researched and verified. Were you able to do that?
We haven't expanded on the restoration project and the research for the paint, but we will do once the time is appropriate.
So we can stipulate that as well?
Yep, we are restoring the facade of the Otis building and replacing the windows.
I think that's already stipulated in the LPC approval.
Correct.
So you're
Okay.
gonna have to do that anyways, but.
Great. Marty, maybe we'll make
Just-
this the last question.
Just following up on Brad's question, I'm asking, do you have a particular target for your leads designation? Platinum, gold?
Not at the moment, but we would evaluate at the time that we're proceeding with the project. But once we start construction and get into further along in the construction documents, we'll get the team together to see how many points we can get and make determinations then.
That sounds, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude or blunt, but that sounds like a non-answer. Don't you have any preference for what leads designation you might like to try to shoot for?
Sure, we have try to get LEED Gold. We haven't run an energy model. We have to look into it. It's we are through or into design development drawings on there, so it would be early days to figure out and count how many points we could get at the moment.
So the letter that we write could say, the applicant has indicated they hope for LEED Gold, but don't have yet enough information to guarantee that.
I think that's a question.
They're asking.
Yeah, I guess that you could write that.
Thank you.
Great. Viren?
Just very quick follow-up. How many square feet is the total development? Is it more than 25,000?
I'm sorry, I couldn't make that out.
Can you hear me? How many total square feet this project is going to be when completed?
What's the total square footage when the project is completed?
About 315,000 zoning square feet.
So wouldn't you be automatically required to comply to local law 97?
Sorry, Viren, it's a little hard to hear you.
Oh, it's very hard to hear.
I think the question.
The question is, the buildings above 25,000 will require to comply with local law 97. And that requires to meet more of a stringent energy code. You're not at that point yet, I assume. Am I right?
Yes, and that's why I've said, I think twice already, that it would be compliant with the new local law and be an all-electric building.
Sounds good. Okay.
Would anyone like to make a motion on this application?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Would you mind just taking down your presentation so we can see the committee?
Of course.
Thank you. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Brad, I don't think Brad's hand is meant to be opposed. Present not eligible, abstain. Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time and, you know, all the time you gave Jessica and I walking us through the project. And we hope that you can plant some trees and be very environmentally gold standard.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
We
Great.
do appreciate it. And take care.
Great, thank you.
And one more
Thank you.
thing, we do have a website at CB4 for jobs related to the building, to hire local. So if you have anything, we'd love for those to be listed on our site. Thank you.
Thank you for noting that.
I'll put that, we'll put that in the letter too, Brad. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on to agenda item number 2. We have an application, LPC application at 458 West 20th Street for a proposed renovation to an existing residential 5th floor multifamily building in the Chelsea Historic District, including the installation of relocated PTAC grills on the primary facade, repainting of existing facade brick to match existing paint, installation of new light fixtures at entry, new door hardware, and the removal of some window gates. Sorry, long day. Of note, there's currently an application that has been approved by LPC at staff level that we went and checked out. It did not come before us to renovate the windows. They told us they were in kind and therefore it was approved at staff level. That was a different applicant, and I just want to state that, so there's no confusion. And also of note, this is our first response to the LPC checklist. So we asked the applicants in our meeting on November 7th how they liked it, and they said it was fine, it was good, it was helpful, maybe, I don't know, not terrible, at least. So that's good news. And now I'm going to turn it over to Courtney. Courtney, you sent through a revised presentation at 5 today, and I don't know if Janine was able to get that into the Dropbox. It was pretty late.
That's okay.
Janine, were you able to?
No, I wasn't able to.
Yeah, so if you could just call out any material changes, I don't know if it was just a different, presentation style or there's actually anything different. But that's just a little too late for us to get it into this meeting on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Courtney Wollaston. Nice to meet you all virtually. I am the applicant and architect hired by the co-op owners to do this facade restoration. Can I share my screen or?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so I'm actually sharing the latest version, if that's okay. And I'll note the change. It's very minor. Well, sorry, it might not be minor.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so anyway, this is a facade renovation to reorganize the PTAC unit grills that expunge on the exterior to be more organized under the windows, along with some other smaller staff level approval, repainting, the ironwork being taken off the windows, door hardware and lighting. So I'm going to walk you through one change, and just to bring everybody who hasn't seen this up to speed, this is on 20th Street between 10th and 9th, or 9th and 10th. And this is the existing condition. You can see here these heating vents that are coming kind of haphazardly out of the brick. And then you see here the 1980s photograph of the facade with this middle window that was removed at some point. And this is where the change from what you've had last week and what we sent today, sorry for that. Landmarks dug up this pre-80s designated photo that we did not have until today. And this, they're trying to figure out, Landmarks is going to dig back in their records and find out when these openings were bricked up and if it was permitted work. So they're working and we're assisting on trying to figure that out. So that's a small hiccup here where we're not sure what is public hearing and what's not, but that's new as of today. So I apologize for that late change. We added this photograph in because we didn't have it until today. But anyway, our story here is that we're replacing the PTAC units to be organized underneath the windows and repainting. Landmarks has asked us to do test swatches of the paint to find out what the paint currently is, and then swatches of historic paint colors that might match the brick as best as possible. And here are some more photos on why we might not be able to just take the paint off and restore the brick. It's not so simple because they've been toothed in with non-historic brick. But what we do plan to do is to take, when we move this vent under this window, we will take the historic brick and tooth it in appropriately into those openings as best we can to bring it back to the original mortar joints, the original concoction. And I wish it wasn't painted, but paint. And like you mentioned earlier, the there was an application that was approved to replace these windows 6/6 wood painted white. Part of our restoration is to change, to take the ironwork off the windows and replace the lanterns here. It was a comment that these lanterns were too big, so we've selected ones that are smaller. Let me see if I can zoom in here. And you can just see the current condition at which these vents are in. So this page, we're just looking at some precedent images from around the historic district of other examples of louvers that are underneath the windows. And in some cases, we can't, obviously, we have to put the louvers back under the windows because some of these old split up apartments have these dividing walls that prohibit us from keeping it where it is. And we are also just trying to organize the facade and bring it back to, as much as possible, to the way it was. So here's a side-by-side of existing conditions and proposed elevation of where the PTAC units are going to go underneath each window. And then a rendering and in a photograph, forgive the rendering, please. This is meant to be painted the same color that we paint the brick. It's not meant to stand out like that in the rendering. We think this might be one of the colors that we will put up as a swatch for landmarks to come by and look at. They asked us to remove a portion of the brick and expose it, and then also come up with a couple other color options for them to assist us in deciding. In our preliminary meeting with Jesse Bodine, he asked us to add a photo of the lanterns that are going flanking the front door and the entry hardware. I was hoping that we would get the spec on the intercom. I don't have it. I apologize. We will enter that when we can, swapping out the old intercom for a new video intercom. That concludes the long and short of our proposal here.
Thanks. Can you just reiterate, sorry, again, what the difference in the two presentations are? I'm not sure I understand.
Yep. So the only thing that's different is we got new information with this photograph that was I guess this is the 40. I don't know what year this is from, but we just got this today from Landmarks, which shows at some point the windows being bricked up.
And how does that affect your application?
We don't know yet, because they're looking into whether or not that brickwork was done under an application or not.
So sorry for, being a little bit new to all of this, but how are we approving an how are we recommending approval on an application that we don't know if it's an application? Sorry.
I was asking myself the same question earlier. I don't know, and I'm sorry for the I'm not trying to be
understood
confusing or anything. I mean, our proposal remains the same. Landmarks will come up with whatever documentation they can find. No matter what they find, we still want to propose what we're proposing. I think no matter what, it's going to have to go to a public hearing.
Okay. We'll start with Viren. I think you had your hand up first.
Yes, just a clarification. In one of the photographs,
sorry, Viren, can you move closer to your microphone or
yeah,
thanks.
Something's going on with my microphone.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No problem.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, can you go back to that photograph? It's just a clarification question before I go into deeper questions a little bit later. One photograph shows bricked up windows, another one shows windows open. Which one is the earlier version of it? The black and white photos that you just showed from LPC.
I don't know. I don't know. We just got it today and I don't know.
Okay.
So should we be postponing this application until next month? And when you have more answers and we know exactly what we are actually discussing?
Well, you can see clearly there were larger windows at the front facade here, and they were changed in this later, what we're calling designation photo. So this one, in my opinion, is later.
The middle photo?
No, sorry, this one, because the windows were larger originally with this little Juliet guy, and then they were bricked up and bricked up in the middle, and then eventually created to be this. And this all predates my client and the condo association, the co-op association.
Yeah, which is where my question comes up. If LPC comes back and says you'll have to put those windows back in.
We can't, because a lot of the apartments are divided by a wall.
Yeah,
And there's
but
there's two different shareholders, two different owners. You can't just put a window halfway in between two owners.
Which is, it's not the city force jurisdiction. What I'm saying is that LPC may have such an opinion about that. So maybe this application is kind of premature.
As
Yeah.
of 5 o'clock today.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. So I mean, we can take everyone's comments and continue to discuss it, or we can table it until next month when you have more information and we can understand the application a little bit better.
You know, it's always helpful to hear your comments, because then even when I get more information, I can have your comments in my mind. So I'm happy to hear them.
Okay, we'll do that. It's a bit unorthodox, but we'll do it very quickly. So
Okay.
I'm gonna ask everybody to leave it to max 60 seconds per person. Speak your mind and we'll move on, and then we'll move on. And I guess we'll see you next month. So David?
Yes, can you just one quick.
Sorry, Viren, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One
Yeah,
more
of
quick
course.
thing. If we're going to actually proceed and sort of raise some of the questions, the second question I have is that if you're going to go back to the drawing board, you might want to consider not necessarily using PTAC and find some other ways of actually doing the same thing so that you don't really have to deal with the sort of facade issues that LPC might bring up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we did look into that, but there's simply no way of bringing a shaft into these units. These units are very small. They're landlocked, so to speak, by a public hallway and a stairwell. There's no way to put them on the roof and bring it all the way through.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. David?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I disagree that there's no way of doing it. Have you looked into split system ductless air conditioning?
We did, and there's only the way that you can come through is through the public stair.
Right, but you don't need a very large element coming down through the building. I would simply say that I would never support removing historic brick fabric in a historic district to create openings for under the window air conditioning systems, which are one of the most rudimentary systems there is. It might be appropriate elsewhere, but certainly not in a historic district. And I'd be very worried about us approving or recommending anything where there might be an outstanding violation. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, David. Mike?
Let's let the other folks go first.
Okay. Bert?
Yeah, I was concerned. I think critically, we have to know the date of that new photo. Of course, David, you mentioned, something about, I forget the word you used, but, if those windows were taken out when it was already a landmarked building, then we have an issue here. But if those windows were taken out before it was landmarked, it just tells us what was there before, which that center photo gives us a better idea. But was it a violation or not? The date of that photo, when those windows were bricked over, is important to know.
Right. Sorry to interrupt, but the historic district was created in 1970, which is quite a while ago. And it looks to me like there might even be in the photo the tops of some cars parked along the street. Maybe we could tell from that if we had a photo that.
We could make guesses and do, forensic intelligence on the photo, looking at the cars and maybe look at the date on the license plates if we could do that. But I would rather have an actual date when that photo was taken, if someone really knew that. Yeah, the landmark district does go back, but these buildings go back a lot further than the landmark district.
Right, and there's even been a further change since the photo on the left where you can read where the windows were. The brickwork is recessed and you still have the lintels over the tops of the windows. Further work has been done since those windows were blocked in, and who knows when that was done.
Yeah, and in the photo of today, when we look closely, when we had a close-up of the building as it exists today, you could see, unless I was imagining what I was saying, that there's differences in the bricks in the center of the building.
You're absolutely right.
There are differences in the bricks there, right there. So you can see where the windows were.
Thanks, Bert. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Brad?
If you don't mind, I just want to jump in quickly. I just looked up online. That photograph, black and white photograph with windows, is 1940s.
Yeah.
So the caption below that, it says photograph from 1940.
How did you find that so quickly?
I just looked up online and I can share with Carrie and Jesse later on.
Yeah, so this one, I think we have it switched. This one's from the 40s. Obviously the car sort of indicates that, right? And then this one's from the 80s.
Right.
So what Landmarks is looking
Sorry,
at,
if I can just call on people to speak.
Sure.
No, you go ahead, Courtney, and finish your thought.
so Landmarks is looking into, they're doing a little forensics now of what was applied for, if there was any records.
Great. So we know we're waiting for that information, and we're going to have to get that information and hear this application again. So maybe if we just keep our comments focused on the application itself, assuming that there have been some issues with the building and Landmarks. So I'm going to look, Brad.
I think, as all the other board members said, there's no way we can approve this. There's no way we can allow grills like that in the facade. And the middle picture is what we're going to want in the end. There's absolutely the HVAC split system can fit in these units. I do it all day long. And also, I like the lower window all the way to the bottom. So, my suspicion is, and I'm sure David could say, is they're looking back to see they're going to want all those windows. And as far as the interior split between the units, that still could be a full wall behind the windows. So the street level still has the right look. So, they can come back next week, next month, but it can't look anything like this.
Thanks, Brad. Pamela?
Gosh, guys, this poor sad building has been so butchered so many times that there's barely a trace. it originally had a high front stoop. You can read that in the facade as it exists now. You can read exactly where the bricked-in windows were bricked in. Indeed, the parlor floor windows had been shortened before the middle windows were bricked in. All of that could be restored. LPC, I would be absolutely shocked and horrified if they would approve punching any more holes through this masonry, even if it does reorganize the facade of the building. I agree. I think they're going to want those windows back, and I certainly would like those windows back. I would also like to see the paint removed from the brick, and the original brick color should be available for all of us to see.
Thanks,
It's
Pamela.
Too much has happened to this poor dear.
Appreciate that. Betty?
Yeah, there was one graphic that I was a little confused about. Could you put the graphic on that shows the color of the bottom and the top? That one. Is this just purely, it's a very confusing, this is the proposal. I mean, the bricks are so much darker on the upper area, and then the bricks are totally different, or the front is so totally different color. Is there something weird about this that I should know?
Yeah, I think I mentioned when I got to this slide that you can ignore the colors. It's just meant to show you that the grills are being painted the same color as
sorry.
brick. And then we specify, again, Landmarks asked us to do a swatch sample of different types of colors and expose the original brick. So there's still an investigation to be made for the color, but it might be something like this if it's being repainted.
But that looks so different than the existing, that brown.
Again, we don't know. They asked us to come up with 3 different options, so we don't know.
I mean, I just think that
they said it has to be in the red, orange, brown range, and we don't know. I need to expose the original brick first and find out what the composition of the paint is, find out what color, how we can closely match it. If we're unable to get the brick, to match everything, then Landmarks have the final say on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like, we did ask you for swatches and the light fixtures, and it feels like we're not there yet. So again, I just feel like we're premature here. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna wait and see what you come up with.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if we should should we just table this and move on? I see some nodding. I see one
Make the
no.
motion.
Okay,
good to
Viren
me.
says
I
yes.
second it.
So thanks so much for coming, Courtney. You should follow up with Janine and Jesse about, what you find out, and then obviously we'll figure out what's next.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day. Have a good night,
Yes,
everybody.
Thank you. Brad, do you have your hand up still, or did you want to say something now?
I just want to say thank you that they're trying to restore it. We just got to get them in the right direction.
I agree. And Mike?
I just want to put in my emotional thoughts here. And I see Pamela and I are on the same wavelength. I would like to see the building look just like it did with those 1940s cars on the street, which means that if I were LPC commissioner, I would be telling you to put those windows back in and find a solution. I mean, the building is taking a toll. It is nothing like what and sometimes the architects get it perfectly right. They just make a nice building. And that one there was an aesthetically pleasant building to look at. And if we keep losing them one by one, well, the whole district ain't gonna look the way it used to.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that this even came up tonight. It came through at 5 o'clock, it was hard to know what the difference was, right? And yeah, I think maybe, you know, Jesse not being around or I'm not sure he would have noticed either what the difference was. But it clearly is, they're not ready for us to be weighing in on this. But I think everybody's made some good points, and thank you for that. Should
So
we
let
keep
me
going?
say,
Yeah.
can I, my hands up?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So the photographs that they came up with, the most recent one, I know you don't want to do sleuthing on it, but the cars that you see at the bottom of the photograph and the rest of the picture is obliterated by the signage at the bottom, are obviously cars from the 1980s, probably, and that was a filling station, a garage, and a gas station on that site before the building immediately west of that was built, the one that goes to the corner, the big modern building. So clearly the work was done probably unpermitted, bricking up those. If they can't find a permit for that work, they're in violation. So that's also an issue.
Interesting that LPC staff approved the windows just a few months ago without noticing any of these issues. But that kind of takes us to where we're going. So we're going to old and new business, if everyone's okay with that. And Jessica and we had a very busy month. So we just wanted to kind of give you a quick rundown of some of the things that we've been up to. On October 18th, we met with Representative Nadler's office regarding the EMS relocation, the ULURP. We reiterated the community cannot accept waiting 15 years for this project to begin, and had a good conversation. They're in agreement and believe that we need to elevate it further to Senator Schumer. So we are going to follow up. And it was a good conversation. On October 25th, the LPC application for 442 West 22nd was approved at LPC without testimony. I don't know if you guys remember that one. It was the one with the very sort of modern back wall. They did make some recommendations for changes, but it was approved. And on October 26th, at the CPC hearing on the EMS station, Jessica testified per our letter's recommendations and did an amazing job. On October 28th, we met with DSNY and Councilmember Botcher's office to discuss the use of former colored school number 4 and their inspection report, which is in the Dropbox. As you can see, we feel like there's no reason at all why we shouldn't get access into this site. They state that it's perfectly safe. So we spoke to them and reiterated our, concern about the roof leak and that we need to remediate that immediately. It was a good conversation. We still have to follow up because we've not been invited in yet. So we'll be following up again. And one interesting thing was that DSNY came back with an idea for the site. I really think everybody should have a look at that inspection report. It's interesting to read. But they came back with an idea for the site that was a sanitation museum. So the good news is that I think they're thinking about a reuse for the building, which is, good. Should it be a sanitation museum? Only if there's a significant, portion dedicated to the historical, former colored school number 4. But they are engaging with us and that's good. So I don't know if anyone has anything to say about that. Okay, moving on. Finally, on November 9th, we had a meeting with ESD, Senator Hoylman, representatives from Assemblymember Godfrey's office, representatives from Jerry Nadler's office, Councilmember Botcher, Councilmember Botcher's office, our borough president's office, HCR, Jeffrey, Joe, Jessica, myself, so pretty much everyone. And ESD is proposing issuing an RFP for Bayview. So we thought we were entering that meeting to discuss what the RFP should contain. And they presented us their version of an RFP. So the great news is that after the news about Penn Station, they're still moving forward. They still want to move forward with Bayview, and they still want to move forward with Bayview with 60 plus or minimum 60 affordable housing units. The question now is, what are we really doing with Bayview? And the RFP, I think, as it was written very quickly, first of all, we all believed that it was moving way too fast, that we need community input and we need committee input. And sort of that's why we're bringing it up now. We don't necessarily have a goal at this moment. We need to circle back with everybody and figure out what our next steps are. But we wanted to bring it up because it's definitely coming and they're going to issue an RFP. And HHS is very, obviously involved in this process. And from the housing document that they put together, we also posted that in the Dropbox. They have an idea for more than 150 permanently affordable housing units, plus other types of supporting housing units. We know as a community, we want to make sure that we have a community center with the pool and potentially, the commercial kitchen, the gym. We also know that there are preservation needs that are very strong with this building. So we want to start to talk about it, but we're not really sure what's next. So I'm just putting that out there because in my mind, I always like to know where we're going and we're not really sure. The one thing we need to do is we're sort of putting the brakes on them a little bit to make sure there's no RFP put forward without community input. So I think our first step is to talk about it as a group. What are our ideas? What do we think need to be included? And then the next step is to figure out what is the real community engagement on this? How do we get the community involved? And then we go back to ESD. So Betty, sorry if that was very long-winded.
No, that's wonderful. I'm glad you brought it up. I had the luxury of hearing about this at the Housing Committee meeting the other day. And I think part of the proposal, at least what I heard, was a section for mental health. And so, I think you didn't quite make it to that description, and which I am very supportive, and it's a great need, and how you arrange it within the building is another thing. And I'm very excited about this, and I do think that maybe I didn't read what was in the Dropbox, but I think maybe we should have more input from the community, and that perhaps Chelsea Land Use and the Housing Committee could have a joint information session or something with the community so that everybody can put their 2 cents in it. And it's a very, very important project. And there are many aspects to it. And there are opportunities for people to develop job training. There's this huge industrial kitchen there. There's a huge roof where you could do, I don't know, maybe a vegetable garden. I'm big on vegetable gardens. And so I think, and I don't know what do they have a draft RFP now? Yes or no?
Sorry, yes, they have a draft RFP, but from the meeting and, our POV, the elected's POV, it is not, it's not happening. So that they need to start to explore some of the other alternative uses for affordable housing. Plus in the HHHS document, it does say mental health, potential mental health, facility or beds, or a portion of it that is dedicated to that. So that is in the Dropbox. They need to sort of look into that more. They need to, discuss it with potential partners or, figure out what can be done. We need to make sure that our community is involved. So we left it at that before we move forward. Like, also there, it was like an RFP light, it felt like. So a lot of, of the representatives commented on, it's not detailed enough for the actual, what are we doing with the beds? How many beds do we have? What are we doing with preservation? What are we doing? It was like very vague.
Yeah, so as you might know, or some people know, there's the chapel, there's various interior things, there's the exterior in terms of, and there was this, I don't know if it came up about the edge on the outside that somebody's been tearing it off.
The tiles,
that I've looked at it in the field and I'm not happy with that.
Yeah.
So I have a vision of somebody, maybe Board 4, making a slideshow of showing the building and summarizing the options that are being considered for the uses. And I don't know if the exact numbers are realistic for, so many beds, but maybe some kind of a range, and that we have a big information meeting where people can give all their comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. I think that's great. Mike?
Yeah, so this draft RFP, I mean, did you see it? Did Joe see it?
Yeah. I won't even call it a draft RFP. I mean, maybe ESD considered it a draft RFP, but it's not moving forward. None of the elected officials were in favor of that actual document. They are obviously in favor of what we're talking about now, is like, what are the great ideas for Bayview, and like, what, how do we make this something really spectacular for the community, and to, start to address some of the issues in the community, and to create all these spaces for the community, and to preserve a beautiful historic building. So it's like, but the good news is that the project did not die with the Penn Station hold. So they are going to move forward, and we now need to insert ourselves into that process.
Yeah, well, in the future, I think, when these documents come out, we should be able to see them.
It's in the Dropbox, but we didn't know that they were going to present this either.
The future, the actual drafts. And, we've been dealing with it so many years now. And as Betty said, there are so many aspects to this particular building.
Yeah.
I mean,
We've been asking for access
I'd love
for
to
months.
live there, be able to walk across the street with my dog to the dog run, stuff like that. But then you've got those historical things like the pool. The pool area is just a major part of this building. And when you talk about tiles and all that, I worked on the restoration of Ellis Island. Okay. There were something like 3 or 5 or something million tiles in Ellis Island. And only 6 of them had to be replaced. Okay, how's that? 6 of them out of 3 million tiles. They had all the extras down in the basement. It was an incredible project. This goes back 20, 30 years ago. And I look at this building and I say, well, if Ellis Island could be restored, well, so can this building. Keep the landmarks, the traditional aspects of it, and don't tear anything down that would diminish all that. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, the tiles that we're referring to are the exterior tiles. That's
right.
Yeah. So there's sort of many things happening at the same time, and we are still trying to get access into the building because we don't quite know. We don't, like Jessica and I have never seen the interior, so we want to get in there and see. We hear about the pool, we hear about the chapel, but we've never seen it. So as well as Joe and that committee as well, Maria, they want to get in there too, so we can see really what we have to work with, and then you guys too. So we keep pressing for that. And I think that's going to happen soon, David, I really do. We are really trying. And Jessica texted me that the reason that the RFP was not made public was because they don't necessarily want developers, to know that they're developing this quite yet. So it was a meeting with Community Board 4 and the elected officials, so or representatives. So I think that it's all in good faith that we're going to get somewhere great together.
Well, I understand that process because I did it with the NYCHA developments.
Yeah.
And we kept it private till the very last day.
Yeah.
But it worked out. And so I
yeah,
I appreciate that.
I think there's a lot of people
idea.
who really want this to work out. So David?
Yeah, I think what's really called for is a feasibility study, looking at different alternatives for different kinds of housing, like maybe an SRO-based supportive housing for people who need special services, or maybe it's a mix of affordable housing and that kind of housing. And you'd really want to take into account current accessibility standards, which are going to have a big impact on things like everything from bathrooms to corridors to door widths, and looking at what the implications are of saving some of those interior spaces that would have a lot of benefit. And on the subject of tile, there is interior tile, particularly on the sides of the swimming pool. It's really quite fantastic. But I think before they send out an RFP, they need to do a feasibility study so that we can see what it's reasonable to ask for and what the potential of the building is. And we should definitely be engaged in that process.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Pamela?
Well, first, when and if a tour is arranged, I definitely want to be a participant in that. So I'd be grateful to be a part of it. This is a warning. Back when Bayview was being put forward, there was an enormous reaction in this community, very negative, very people terrified, mommies with their stroller kids. Oh, this is awful. We can't have this in our community. We won't feel safe anymore. Those are criminals. It was nasty. That was when Bayview was sitting way over there on the Hudson River and there was no residential anywhere near it. Presently, there is a lot of residential, and all of it is very, very upscale and very, very expensive, and has very, very expensive strollers. So my warning to you is that there is going to be such pushback. We need to be very careful how this is introduced into the community, the idea. And yeah, we should have open meetings, and the more the merrier, but just brace yourself. That's my
maybe you have some suggestions of how to introduce it, because the truth is, I think to me, it's like it's the perfect spot, right? Facing Chelsea Piers gym, that's no one can afford to go to have a community pool. Like, it would be wonderful. So
okay, yes,
I think we're ready
for that. How you go about it is the community or the CB4 or whoever forms a community advisory committee and very carefully appoint at least 7 or 8 people to it who are well-respected people from the community, who can go back to their groups and their block associations and say, we've got this under control and you don't have to be frightened, and there will be all sorts of security, whatever it is you have to say to take the heat out of it, because there will be heat. I served on that advisory committee when Bayview, from before it even opened, for the first several years. There was very little reaction. It calmed down. There was never any real issue about it. And ultimately that committee dissolved because there wasn't any purpose for it anymore. But that was how we, at that time, were able to take the heat off it. And I
So
would
maybe offline you can, we can connect Jessica, you and myself about, some of the people that might be good for a committee like that.
I sure can.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Yeah.
Brad?
Yeah, when the women's group was going to take over the building, they were going to build that tower next door. So is that part of the RFP to upzone that, get that up higher, where we could get the community housing and the services into a new building? And then because, if the developer is going to pay for this, it's got to work both ways or we won't get anything. And then that helps us preserve the inside of the existing buildings. So I'm just wondering, was that discussed at the meeting?
It wasn't necessarily discussed as an option, but the question did come up, like what is our threshold for demolition? And I don't think they mean the whole building. I think they probably mean what you're referring to. Like, what is our threshold for increasing the FAR? What is our threshold for new construction? So that's all TBD. But I think it's something we should think about. Yeah.
Was quite high. We liked the new standing building because more was preserved.
Yeah.
And that fell apart because they wanted them to be connected. And
Yeah.
in this case, they can be connected, as David or Viren will tell you at the bottom. But I look at it as, there's something to be built there for the housing. And then on the other side, it could be much more for the public, right? The kitchen,
Yeah.
the pool, job center, mental health institute, stuff on the roof, as Betty was saying, but more of a community facility there, and then have the housing next door, which will hit all the codes. And then, they can also get their money back with the leasing of those agencies. So,
Yeah, that's definitely going to be part of the conversation. Thanks, Brad. Tina?
Yeah, so I'll second Pam. If there is a tour and there's room, I'd love to be a part of it. Heard so much about this building. And I'm just wondering what is the holdup in terms of getting into tour? I mean, in the past it was the building's dangerous. There was one thing after the other, and I know the Waltons, if you want to call them that, really had a difficult time getting in as well. What is the impediment currently?
I'm not sure there's an impediment, except for, actually, I think now there might be an impetus to get us into the building, because now that they're issuing the RFP, they want us in there to look at it, and so we can help them expedite it.
Great. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Good news.
If anything, the impediment is the tiles that we're going to see.
Oh my God, the tiles. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So many conversation about those beautiful tiles. I have to see them in person.
I know.
I'm all for preservation.
But we're going to keep pressing. And we said, the faster we can see it, the faster we can reach out, we can reach out to the community and have an educated conversation with them about it.
Yeah.
Because it's
very
really hard to
exciting.
talk about a space you've never seen.
Exactly.
So we're trying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Hector?
Yeah, this site has been a subject of a lot of conversation. I mean, we just had a conversation about this in the Housing and Human Services Committee, where basically, we have Fulton houses, NYCHA, we have Elliott Chelsea, among other communities in the neighborhood here, that basically they're underserved. I mean, yes, we have the rec center on 25th Street that has a pool, and it's kind of in contention right now because lifeguards tend to dominate that and kind of push out a lot of the local kids and people that live in the community that want to use the pool and the gym on a regular basis. And obviously they can't afford the extravagant prices of some of the memberships in the neighborhood for even a gym or even definitely not a pool. And Chelsea Piers seems to be the only real other option. And sure, they offer some scholarship for some folks in the community, but it's not really available to everybody at large, unfortunately. So this site is really key to really bringing that to the masses as far as services such as pool and the workout area and health center. Brad pretty much hit the nail on the head when it came up to the prospect of possibly building some housing development in conjunction with it, possibly. So, it would be a win-win for everybody. So I really hope that it's, as a representative of the community and NYCHA residents, that we do have this option to hopefully get this developed properly, so that the neighborhood at large can take advantage of it.
Thank you, Hector. I think we agree with you on all those points. Thank you. Kit?
Thanks, Carrie. Just want to build off of some comments that multiple folks have made. I think opening this up for community input is going to be really key, and appreciate that you and everybody else is pushing for that. I would love to see us invite some of the schools that are pretty close to this site into that conversation. Guardian Angel operates a pre-K, and then I think they go up through, I don't want to make this up, but they operate a decent sized school about an avenue and a block away from there. There's a daycare, I think it's called San Jose, that's like an avenue and a half away from there. And then PS11 is not far. And building off of what Hector said, there used to be a pool that was open to the public for certain uses. It hasn't been open, I believe, to the public since COVID. I don't know if students and families that currently attend that school have access to it, but access to a pool in the neighborhood for the community would be a real, I think, big win for the neighborhood. And then in addition to a very expensive gym, Chelsea Piers also operates a daycare, as well as a ton of programming, after school, summer school for, it's probably thousands of kids. So sort of taking that into account as we think about the uses of this future site. There are a lot of families, many from the neighborhood, as well as folks who come in from other neighborhoods, whose kids would really benefit from another really fantastic community space. And I wonder if I think it's called Friends of Clement Moore Park, could be involved, just because they've been close to the redevelopment of that playground into what continues to be a really great space for folks who live in the neighborhood who have kids.
Thanks, Kit. Appreciate all those comments. Viren?
Yeah, I think my comments are going to be much shorter. Kit and Hector have covered most of it. I think this space can actually use a public bath, public pool. It's missing in the community, and it could be more than a community center. It could be a community resource center. So I think we need to sort of think outside the box. It's a much bigger building footprint that could have variety of different usage. And I think that high school population and NYCHA population should be considered sort of in a significant way compared to anything else, because everybody else has access to a lot of facilities in the neighborhood. I think that's where I sort of, I would want this to go. And I definitely agree with David's comments about feasibility study in terms of both structure as well as sort of potentially converting some of this usage for public use. That would be the very first step. And the second part of it, and I don't know who gets to do that, is finding right partners. And that sort of study would be very, very much required, because somebody's going to have to sort of fund this effort, because it's not going to happen. City is not going to take on that humongous task of converting this space into any kind of facility. So we need to find some community partners, and we have a lot of technology companies in the neighborhood, including Chelsea Piers, who could potentially be the partners in terms of, if not anything else, operational kind of purposes. So I think we need to find multiple partners who could actually make this come to fruition. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of talk and a lot of wish lists.
Thanks. That's a great point and great discussion about it. So there will be further discussion, and I would expect that we'll bring this back up again next month. And hopefully, I think, be able to formalize some recommendations to include in the RFP. And then on their side, they are starting to sort of widen their aperture of what kind of use this building could actually represent, which is great. So all in all, it's a very good starting point, I think, and I hope, and we'll see what happens. So that's that, and then only, let's see, I think the last bit was that on 11, I was going through all the things that we've been doing this month, which were many, and on 11/11, so November 11th, as part of the capstone project, Jessica led a walking tour from 14th to 30th Street on the West Side Highway, joined by David and Bert, and really nice to see that everybody joined that to look at, the perspective represented as we approach this project on the West Side. And then on November 14th, Jessica and I met with Sonia Guire and Gregory Calla from LPC to discuss how to work better together, which was really nice. And and we brought up, of course, our 3 buildings, our 3 landmark applications, St. Benedict de Moore, former Colored School number 4, and Bayview. And they're going to look into why they have not been expedited, which is nice. So hopefully we're, starting to form a little bit of a relationship there. And one of the things Jessica asked was, about following up on complaints. And she said that we can, I know this might ring a little bit hollow, David, sorry, but she said we can follow up on complaints regarding non-compliance and enforcement by first looking up permits issued to a specific address, which I know we do. And after a complaint is determined to be legitimate, that photos can attest to the condition and help guide their determination. I know we do all of that because we're super activist, but the good news is that there's a line of communication open, and they seem really happy to work with us. So we'll see what happens there. And
I was going to say, David must have not been at that meeting.
He wasn't.
No, I'm kidding, big guy.
It's the first of many, though. So
I remember his Highline Hotel letter. He had everything in there.
I know. I think they may have had a little bit of a boilerplate happening because we were sort of like, oh no, and then she did it. She acknowledged like, oh, you guys already do that. You do all of that. You do everything. Yeah, no, you know what you're doing. So I think that the good news is that maybe it's a quicker way to get some answers. So if you have anything that you want us to bring up quickly, or if you want us to try to set up a meeting quickly on some of the outstanding projects, we can try to do that. And that's sort of our report for the week, for the month, for the week. Yay. Busy. And Jessica's, she left. She was here. I think she left.
I just have a quick point. I'm on the Meatpacking District Board. Obviously, Jeffrey's the boss. And they did an incredible study of, as he calls it, the back porch to the West Side Highway and the revitalization of those areas that could be done. It was a really in-depth study with renderings and layouts, which kind of impacts what we do. So I don't know if we could talk to Jeffrey and maybe have that shared or have someone from the bid present to us, but it was really well thought out and they spent some real money on it. And I would love to get some of the board's input. The best way to say it is all those streets there where they're now drag racing and all that stuff could be made into a park. And so just something to talk about maybe with Jeffrey for the next meeting.
Yeah, that's great, Brad. Why don't you send us an email and we'll see if we can, circle in Jeffrey and get that happening for next month.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Betty, is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Pamela. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good
Have a
night.
good
Good night.
Thanksgiving,
Well
everybody.
done, Carrie.